Okay, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here at Imperial this evening. I love this uni. Thanks so much for Imran and everyone in the committee for making this possible. And yeah, basically the topic of today's talk is Railgun protocol. I'll just briefly introduce myself and then we'll talk about Railgun. So I've been involved with Railgun for about, so my name's Andre. I've been involved with Railgun for about 2 years now. So I essentially joined 2 years ago as a project manager, helping to get the developers together, work with them, and then I began more involved with Railgun's partners, the Railway project, which focused on building the web app and then the mobile app. So in case there's some hardcore cryptographers among you, I apologize if I won't be able to answer all the detailed cryptographic questions, but I'll do my best. And any questions which I won't be able to answer, there's a Discord group, there's a Telegram group, so there'll be devs who will, I'm sure, be able to give detailed answers. So let's talk about Railgun now. So there'll be a few main topics. So the explanation of the protocol, a brief chat about what were the main challenges involved with building Railgun. Then I'll talk about the governance used for Railgun, which is an interesting topic in itself. Cross-layer messaging, which is something new we've been doing. Don't think many, if any, other protocols have done this. And at the end, I'll talk a bit about the Railgun SDK and if you have a strong interest in privacy, what you can do to enhance the protocol. Okay, so what is Railgun? So Railgun is a secure on-chain privacy solution using zero-knowledge proofs. And just to make a point, it's not a mixer. So essentially, you control, everything's controlled by your private key. So that arguably is a fundamental difference from, say, AdStick or Donado Cash. And what can users do? Well, users can send funds privately and anonymously. They can do tracing. So it's already possible to do private and anonymous tracing through Railgun with your favorite DEX. So you can do it through Manchi, you can do it through Uniswap, SushiSwap. And in general, you can integrate Railgun with your favorite Z app, and we'll talk more about this. And you can bring privacy, full privacy and anonymity to your favorite Z app. And at the moment, we have Railgun rolled out on Ethereum, BSC, Polygon, Arbitrum. We'll talk more about Arbitrum, but more rollouts are coming soon. So the next two blockchains will be, I think, Solana and Polkadot. And then basically the protocol will move to whatever blockchains have the biggest usage, whatever blockchains are the most popular ones at the moment. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the privacy problems. So traditionally in the crypto space, privacy has been deprioritized, but I think it's getting more and more traction now as people understand how important privacy is, and that's basically a fundamental human right, and it's just not a normal state where, say, you pay 2 USDT for coffee at Starbucks, and then not only you know everything, not only Starbucks knows everything about your transactions, but you also know everything about Starbucks transactions. So I think privacy is getting to the forefront of the big unsolved problems in crypto. And yeah, commercial analytics is ever improving. We have all this big $1 billion worth companies like Tencent, Chainalysis, Elliptic, yeah, that essentially make millions from tracking and selling your data. And in this environment, where blockchains are completely public, there are companies which make a huge business out of explicitly tracking the data and tracking transactions, and all the use cases for privacy, which we can also talk about. The demand for privacy is going to grow. And it's our strong belief that DeFi cannot grow into transformative technology until the privacy problem is solved, and solved properly. So how does Railgun work? Well, essentially you have a smart contract which is based on zero-knowledge proofs. It's a multi-agent and programmable shared account wallet. So the hash function used for Railgun is Poseidon. So the reason we use Poseidon is it's very fast, and it's particularly good at working with zero-knowledge proofs. And Railgun's been programmed in such a way that through the Railgun SDK, which we'll talk about towards the end of the presentation, you can easily integrate the protocol with your favorite idea. And it's already been integrated for tracing purposes, but the possibilities are limitless. So Curve, Aave, you name it. And the core feature of Railgun is that it's a now one protocol. So you get all the security of Ethereum, you get all the power of Ethereum. There's basically no need for rollups, there's no need for L2, which is also a distinction between Railgun and some other privacy protocols. Okay, so Railgun in a nutshell. So if you try to look at the transaction on Etherscan, that's what it's going to look like. So as soon as you shield your funds, so in Railgun we don't usually use the terms deposit and withdraw. We prefer to call them shield and unshield. As soon as your funds are shielded, they're basically in the dark pool, and there's no way to track your transactions through Etherscan. And same applies for when you do, say, trading with shielded assets. And we'll look at the diagram of how it works architecturally, but essentially you can trade, and you won't be able to, third parties on Etherscan won't be able to see your transactions. So we actually think it's one of the strongest use cases for privacy, private trading. Because at the moment, if you're a top-level trader, everyone can see your trade transactions and copy your successful trading strategy, because it's all public on Etherscan. So in particular, we think that Railgun is going to be really useful for professional traders, professional crypto traders. But if you need accountability, say you want to pay your employees privately, but you need accountability for tax purposes, you can always have access to the rich history of transactions, your private transactions, through the Railgun SDK. And you'll be the only person able to view this because you're the only person controlling the private key. But if you need to, say, file your report to HMRC, then you can look up all your transactions for a particular time period, and you can export to CSV and you can send it to HMRC if you need to consider this use case. Yeah, so that's basically the architecture in a nutshell. So you have your public X address. So say you have a MetaMask wallet. You can use Railway, you can use the web app, or you can use the mobile app downloadable on App Store, Google Play to connect with your wallet. So you can either connect directly to MetaMask, or you can just import with seed phrase. And then you can do the core transaction, which is any sort of private DeFi. And say at some point you want to unshield your tokens, and that's the use case that we discuss. Well, suppose you shielded 10 ETH, and there's a strong anonymity set. So there are thousands and thousands of people using this protocol. So then you decide to unshield, well, maybe 1 ETH, and to a completely different address than the one you shielded from. Well, for an external observer, there's no way to link the address, the public X address you're unshielding to, with the original address you shielded from. And yeah, you've got to be fairly careful. So you probably need, you don't want to unshield straight after you shield it, but that's not a very viable use case in any setting. And you would also probably want to unshield slightly different amounts to what you shielded. But as long as there's strong anonymity set, basically the link is broken. So an unshield is separate from shield. And you only really need to unshield in case you want to sell your assets at the exchange and basically transfer them to fiat. Because as long as you don't sell your assets for fiat, then you can stay in Railgun and do everything privately and anonymously. Okay, so another question that was asked during the evacuation was about the use cases for Railgun. So in this slide, we see just a few use cases, but we think they're very important ones. So password protection. For example, you're a very successful trader. You have cutting edge trading strategies. You don't want chain houses, elliptic, and especially competitive traders to know what strategy you're using. So at the moment, if you're an active trader, anyone can look up all your transactions and just copy it. With Railgun, that problem is solved. You just shield all your assets and you trade fully privately and anonymously. Private payroll. More and more companies are going to pay their employees in crypto, in particular for GDPR purposes, but also for the protection of the internal data and compliance. They want to do the payroll privately, right? Also, they don't want other employees to know how much their boss is getting, for example. So payroll should be private by default. So this can be done through Railgun. MEV advantage. So performing arbitrage without everyone rushing to do the same thing as you at the same time. Anonymized analytics. So if you don't want all of your transactions to be viewed by Nansen, Etherscan, chain houses, elliptic. So being able to collect all those analytics, but doing this privately and anonymously, so that only you and the people who you trust in can view this data. And finally, compliance. So what we talked about. So if you need to pay taxes, if you need to interact with financial regulators, you can see all of your transactions, but they're absolutely private and anonymous, so you decide whom to share it with. So, but if you need to pay taxes, then you can extract all this data and just send it as a CSV file to your tax officer. Okay, so let's talk a bit about building Railgun, building the core system. So at the core of it, it's the joint split transaction UTXO model, but done through zero-knowledge circuits. So that's basically an example of how a zero-knowledge circuit can work. So it's essentially cryptographic circuits. So at the core of the protocol, we have those ZK circuits implemented in the circuit language. And then around the core circuits, which do the core of privacy, they're basically Solidity smart contract code for Ethereum. And for example, for Solana, it will be Rust. But for all blockchains at the core, it's the second zero-knowledge circuits. And yeah, there's an efficient version of the Merkle-free, and the Poseidon hash function is used in combination with this Merkle-free, which is optimized for zero-knowledge proofs. Okay, so the raw version of the architecture. So there's the wallet, which is basically the web app and the mobile app, which is done by our partner, Railway. Yeah, you can shield and unshield. Essentially, when you unshield, you need something which is called the relay. So the relay actually pays the fees. So this is done in order to, once again, bring privacy anonymity and break the link between who's unshielding and what's being seen on Etherscan once the unshield is done. And what's seen on Etherscan is basically a relay paying the fees. So yeah, at the cryptographic core, it's zero knowledge, snap verifies, make it free updated, and yeah, basically in the right part of the slide we see the relay adapt modules, and those are all the DApp applications we've been talking about. So at the moment, DEX integration has been completed. So you can basically trade privately and anonymously through Uniswap, SushiSwap, Matcha. There'll also be RainsSwap, which is basically fully private and anonymous swapping without even going outside of the Railgun dark pool, but that's probably going to be done towards the end of the year. Yeah, and basically other DeFi integrations, so all of your favorite protocols like Yield, Finance, Curve. Yeah, basically all of your favorite apps, it's possible to integrate privacy and anonymity using Railgun. Okay, and basically the core system. So zero knowledge proofs. Yeah, so ZK transactions require public and private inputs. So on the left we have the public inputs like Merkle root, hash ciphertext, nullifiers, and on the right we have private inputs. And it's basically the classic send and verify model where the verifier verifies the results of what the program has executed. So like with any zero knowledge transaction, you have the prove and you have the verify. And yeah, the Poseidon hash function that I already talked about, basically the reason it's used in Railgun, it's the sweet spot between the gas costs and the speed. So it's fairly low on gas costs, but at the same time it's fairly quick to be applicable in the settings of a large privacy and anonymity protocol. And today Poseidon is one of the most efficient ZK Snark hashes. Okay, so something that we're really excited about is the way Railgun implements governance. So if you've checked the website, as you might know, there's no such thing as the Railgun company. So Railgun is completely decentralized, and it's a DAO. So there's the Railgun community. If there are any changes to the code, it has to be proposed by the DAO. There's a certain quorum, a certain veto, and then the voting proposal takes place. So the usual problem with those DAOs is that only a small percentage of the community actually participate, because usually there are no incentives for them to basically check the status of the protocol on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And even for the protocols which have their own governance tokens like Curve and Sushi and Uniswap. And one of the unique things about Railgun is that there's this incentive program for members of the DAO community to actually stake their token in order to vote, because to vote you need to have your Rail token staked. And basically what happens is that every 2 weeks, 2% of the Railgun treasury, which accumulates all the fees paid by the users who shield and unshield, gets distributed to active stakers. And that basically incentivizes them to check the status of the protocol and take part in votings, at least on a bi-weekly basis. And yeah, it creates long-term engagement without requiring a lockup or a voters crowd model like the one used in co-finance. Basically, as the protocol will get traction, the base of active users is going to grow, the privacy and anonymity set is going to grow, and so the treasury is going to grow as well. And there'll be more and more rewards coming for the same amount of the governance token staked. And also different, for obvious reasons, different blockchains have different governance tokens, because they're different blockchains. So there's the Rail token for ETH, and then there's the Rail Poly for Polygon, and Rail BSC for BSC. And when Solana and Polkadot are going to be deployed, there'll be Rail and Railsol. That's the governance tokens for respective blockchains. Okay. Another great thing about that we've been really excited about is cross-layer messaging. So essentially, Railgun's just about to get fully deployed on Arbitrum, which, as many of you would know, is one of the most popular Ethereum L2s. And a particular appealing aspect of Arbitrum is that you only pay a fraction of gas fees you would pay on the layer 1 ETH network, but you basically get all the power of the layer 1 ETH network. And yeah, basically with Railgun there's going to be cross-level governance, which is also a unique solution. At least I'm unaware of any other protocols doing this. And essentially what it entails is that the active governors vote for new proposals on layer 1, and then they get securely transferred to Arbitrum, and any code related to the L1 proposal also automatically gets deployed on Arbitrum. So it's kind of a seamless integration between control, the governance of layer 1, and all the changes entailed by this governance happening on Arbitrum. And this is done through secure messaging. Okay, so I'd just like to finish this talk by inviting anyone who is interested in privacy to participate in Railgun's Discord and Telegram channels, and also anyone who enjoys blockchain development and who thinks privacy is one of the pressing and important matters to consider contributing to Railgun code. And this QR code, if you scan it, basically links you to the form, which you can fill in, and also all the upcoming events and socials. And I think it also contains an invitation to the Telegram and Discord groups, which you can basically join and ask questions to developers. And yeah, that's just a quick that's basically a quick scheme of the Railgun SDK. So as I mentioned, it's open for anyone to use. In basically 100, 200 lines of code, it allows you to integrate Railgun into your favorite GApp and bring the privacy and anonymity aspect to it. And it's all open source. So the code has been audited multiple times by very prominent auditing companies, and if you're a developer, if you're interested to look at the code, you can view it in public GitHub. I'll just get back to the QR code slide. So if anyone who's interested gets scanned and basically get in touch with the Railgun community and the developers. Okay, thanks so much again for giving me this opportunity to present to you, and I'd be very interested to hear your questions. Anthony.
Is there any assumption of trust with the reader?
When you say trust,
So, am I trusting the reader?
so the real code is open source, so yeah, it's just like it's basically the trust level with the real. So the real code is all publicly available in GitHub and edited. So there's no individual code with different relayers. And there's no way you can own a relay node. So you can actually make some money from the relay node based on the fees and arbitrage it. There's no way an entity controlling the relay node can interfere with your transactions or actually see where it's coming from and associate it with your wallet, which you should. Is the mic open that way?
Was there any kind of aspirational technology that you took away from the whole network?
No, it's just, and as we discussed, it's very different from other privacy protocols. So it's L1, not L2, like AdStack. It doesn't use rollups. It can be done in, you can do transactions with any amounts, and say with AdStack it has to be, I think, denominations of 10. It's instantaneous, and say with, I think with AdStack or Tornado, I don't remember, it might take up to 4 to 6 hours. So yeah, the inspiration was just the cause of privacy and appreciating how big a problem it is, and that further down the line when crypto becomes more used by the general community, it's going to be an even more pressing issue.
So this is rather rudimentary question. So what's the difference between Railgun and using a VPN to do like settings?
So yeah, consider using a VPN. It's still, you can still trace it on Etherscan, right? So, okay, so with a VPN, you'll probably be pseudonymous. You're definitely not going to be private because, yeah, all of the transactions are still going to be seen on Etherscan. But if you actually look at the use case, even if you try to obfuscate through a VPN, then for a company like Chainalysis, it should be fairly straightforward to link all the transactions. Right? So I don't actually think you can. I think you can achieve anonymity to a certain degree with using VPN, but yeah, if you look at Etherscan doesn't tell your IP address, but it tells you the name of the wallet, right? So what are you going to achieve if you obfuscate your IP with VPN? We don't see IPs on Etherscan. We see wallets. We see OX addresses, right? And can you solve this with a VPN? I don't think you can.
Sorry, I missed the beginning, so I don't know if this is already covered the relevance. Does this allow people to buy NFTs and other assets?
Yeah, that's one very good question. So I actually forgot to mention that as of the last few weeks, Railgun supports shielding and unshielding of NFTs, and actually private NFT auctions are in the pipeline. And yeah, and you can basically shield. Yeah. So you can go to the Railgun web app and you can shield your NFTs.
So,
And you can view your collection privately.
okay, so that would mean the NFT itself is private, or the owner is just seen as anonymous?
The NFT is going to be private as well. So say if you want to send this NFT to someone, it would be a private transaction, but also anonymous. And NFT private options are in the pipeline, which is an interesting use case as well. Because a lot of people don't want the whole world to know that they bought this particular NFT for millions of dollars, right?
And does that mean that the NFT itself is then, you can't find it on?
It won't be viewable on any scan. And all the associated transactions.
We saw how the US government responded to Tornado Cash. What do you think, what steps are you taking, or would you take to prevent something similar happening to this? Because it could obviously be used to obfuscate source of funding.
Okay, so Railgun's a protocol. It's out in the open. Anyone can copy it, same as happened with Uniswap. Yeah, the desire for privacy itself is entirely legal. And there will be other jurisdictions apart from the US. For example, in this country, in Britain, there's a strong GDPR compliance, right? And I think that's what we've been discussing with one of your colleagues, that as crypto becomes more and more mainstream, there'll actually be scenarios where you cannot be public, where you'll need to be private. And those sort of protocols would be ideal for this. So the second point to your question is that there exist technologies like ViewKey, where basically, for compliance reasons, you can share access to all of your information about all of your assets, all of your transactions with a third party like the tax agency, without them being able to actually process and assess your funds. And there's also a developing protocol, I think it's done by some people from the Tornado Cash team, which is called proof of innocence, which is essentially the same thing. So you can give a cryptographic proof that you haven't interacted with any wallets which have been under inspection, for example. But I think the most important point here is that the ultimate brunt and the ultimate responsibility for security does not apply on privacy protocols like Tornado. It applies on centralized exchanges, right? Because if you have, it's for all centralized exchanges, as it should be, the people wanting to transfer crypto to fiat have to show the provenance of the assets, the source of the assets, the transactions. Crypto exchanges can help this. And for example, Railgun is a decentralized code run by a DAO. So centralized crypto exchanges like Binance have much more power to it in order to block those assets and not let them be transferred to fiat. Which I think was the main goal that the US government was pursuing.
Sorry again, if this was covered at the beginning. How would you see Railgun interacting in regards to KYC and potential AML from his, in terms of, as you said, anonymity, but able to confirm with that?
Can you remind me what KYC is?
Know your clients. Know your clients. So making sure you know who the person behind the wallet is.
Yeah, so I think same kind of protocols. So proof of innocence, public view key, Railgun's internal system for compliance, where you can basically show all of your transactions to the people you're obliged by law to show your transactions. And also in terms of interactions with lawyers, one of the use cases for Railgun which I forgot to mention is paying the lawyers privately anonymously, which could potentially be a big use case.
Yeah, I'm interested in how you can maintain control of your assets. So you mentioned that every user gets AM and zero is privately generated. Do they interact with that address or with that, with that address through the protocol, or do they just get the, or how do they interact?
So once assets are shielded, it's a brand new private generated user, which is a which is basically a seed-based private, and it's in the user to attack it.
And then how do they actually use the interface? They use it for the protocol.
Yeah, so they can either write it into it, or they can use the railway fiber, and the code for this is following the railway. Yeah, if you're interested in Railgun, I really encourage you to try Railway. So it's railway.xyz. Or if you prefer to use mobile apps, you can download Railway on Google Play or App Store.
Do you have any support for stable points or USDC?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can. So for example, for Ethereum, you can shield any ERC20 token. For ETH, it would be Rappi, but you can also shield DAI and USDT. And USDC.
Just asking for an example. So, for example, on OpenSea, if you transfer one NFT to another address, and you see the item activity, this shows that from this address to
yeah, because it's public blockchain.
And
if you do it in Railgun, you won't be able to see it on Etherscan or any other ones. Because it's going to be within.
So the Railgun changes, but it doesn't show the transaction.
So same as with other funds, you'll only be able to see the shield. So your NFT going into the Railgun protocol from the public address, but once it's Railgun, you can send it to someone else in the Railgun protocol. It's going to be a private version. Okay.
Do you guys have thread balances on your?
Yes. So you can look them up at the railgun.org website. So it depends on the severity. So it depends on the likelihood and severity. But if it's to the extreme, extremely severe, and highly likely, you can get up to 250,000. So basically the bug balancing, yeah, it's kind of a diagonal table, diagonal matrix, but it ranges from $1,000 to 250,000. Yeah. So any bugs you find in the protocol, yeah, make sure to report them. But the code's been audited multiple times.
Are you guys doing anything specifically different from tornado cash to avoid a prosecution, or is your belief that?
I think it's basically what we discussed. So the protocol is out there, it's completely decentralized. And yeah, as crypto progresses, there'll be more and more demand for privacy.
So you don't think there's any basis then for variables to be able to die?
I don't think so. And I think the solutions we discussed are quite obvious. So proof of innocence, public key, and also the ultimate responsibility lies with exchanges. So yeah, you can have funds moving to privacy protocols, but if you want to tell, they have to end up in exchange. And exchanges will sell a lot of shares of carbon schemes. And exchanges have much more power to control things and decentralized pricing.
What level of control does the DAO have over specific functions of the protocol?
So the DAO basically has full control. So if they decide to change the fundamentals of the first order in the code prior to organized code basically, and yes.
So how expensive would an attack be wherein someone say
As expensive as an attack in Imperial blockchain, yes, the security program is equal to the security of layer 1 effort. So the security program is equal to the security of Imperial or polynomial because it's layer 1 solution. So everything is on the Ethereum layers, so it's as secure as secure. Does this answer your question?
I think what I mean is more so, like, how expensive would it be for, let's say, a bad actor to buy a bunch of the tokens and then stack the DAO vote to propose their own code that would
Okay.
save you every transaction?
So that's more the economics question. So at the peak, Rail was 4.2, and basically it was 4.2 after DCG announced its investing $10 million into Railgun. So now I think it's something around 0.9, and it's basically around, I think, 0.05 ETH. Right, so in order to have a veto, so they're currently, I think, 40 million Rail tokens. So, yeah, to answer your question, I do think there'll be enough liquidity in the pool stash to buy the any Rail token. Even if that would be possible, it would be something around 20 million at the current price, but I think there's just not that liquidity. So now that actors have to do it OTC. For doing this with OTC, we would try and I think, yeah, the more people, the more distributed the token is between governments, what's security is. So what you're talking is 7 to 30% response time, but from the point of view of control. Any more questions? Shall we say it's a piece of paper?
Yeah, if you do have any more questions, then feel free
we can
to
discuss. Yeah.
Can we just have another round of applause for